Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Educator Spotlight series. My name is Nick, and I'm from Amplify. I'm here today with our presenter, Kelly Young, who you'll also see on the screen. She's from Southern California, and she's a elementary school teacher. We're also thrilled for you all to join us here today to take a special look at the Amplify Science curriculum through an educator lens, or through Kelly's lens specifically for today. Some of you may have heard about Amplify Science before. Maybe you're piloting it, you might be reviewing it, maybe you just heard about it for the first time. So we're going to begin by telling you a little bit about the program. Amplify Science was developed by the Learning Design Group rather, at UC Berkeley's Lawrence Hall of Science in collaboration with Amplify. And the curriculum blends blends hands-on investigations, literacy-rich activities, and interactive digital tools to empower students to think, read, write, and argue like real scientists or engineers. And Kelly, if you don't mind hitting the next slide. Just really quick, the phenomena-based approach within every unit of the K-8 program, we introduce students to a real-world problem. I'll go through that in a moment. We then ask students to collect evidence through multiple sources, whether that's scientific articles or student books, hands-on investigations, digital modeling tools, simulations, speaking with each other, videos, a whole host of different sources. They then take that evidence and they build increasingly complex explanations throughout the unit to solve that real-world problem. And then at the end of the unit, in every unit, students are asked to apply that knowledge or transfer that knowledge to a different real world problem. And Kelly, one more time, if you wouldn't mind clicking. And just a couple examples of those real world problems. In grade 1 of the program, in the animal and plant defenses unit, students are asked, how can a sea turtle survive in the ocean after an aquarium releases it? Grade 3, balancing forces unit, how is it possible for a train to float? Grade 4, waves, energy, and information. How can a mother dolphin and her calf communicate underwater when they can't see each other? And then transferring that, how can humans use patterns to communicate? Grade 5, modeling matter. Why do some substances dissolve in a salad dressing while others do not? So again, in every unit, the students are presented with that problem or phenomena in the beginning of the unit. And then as they collect evidence through our multiple sources, they put that evidence together to create increasingly complex explanations to help solve those problems. And one more time, Kelly, if you don't mind, go to the next slide. All right, we're going to now introduce Kelly. So I know you're not here to listen to me talk. Today isn't just about Amplify Science. Today is really spotlighting a lot of the work that Kelly's done using Amplify Science and outside of Amplify Science as well. Kelly is somebody that I've known for almost 3 or 4 years now. So I'm really excited to have her join us here today. From my work with her that Kelly's done a whole lot of work with the Amplify Science curriculum to really take it to a whole new level and come up with some amazing creative ways to connect with her students, increase engagement, differentiate her instruction, and also integrate literacy in her classroom. We've been extremely impressed here at Amplify of the work that Kelly's done, and we hope as you look at the program or review the program that this might help you identify what's possible when you bring Amplify Science to your classroom. So last thing from me, couple housekeeping items. You're going to be on mute throughout the call, but there is a chat box. I see some of you in there. So you can keep chatting with us or each other in there, and I'll drop a few links as we go through the presentation. And then if you'd like to ask Kelly a question, there's another box that says Q&A. We're going to leave a little bit of time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions that you might have for either Kelly about her work with Amplify Science, or if you have anything you want to know about Amplify Science outside of what Kelly's doing, you can ask me questions as well. I'll be monitoring those questions as we go, so we'll leave some time at the end to answer them. And at the bottom of the screen, lastly, you'll see a button that says CC on top of the wording live transcript. If you'd like to see closed captions as you listen, you can click that button for real-time closed captioning. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Young to talk about literacy, integration, and differentiation.
All right, thank you so much, Nick. So as he explained, my name is Kelly Young, and I am going to be talking to you about my work with Amplify, and more importantly, how I have been using it to kind of differentiate my science instruction and how to integrate literacy and science together. So, a little bit about myself. I have been an upper elementary educator for the past 12 years, meaning that I've primarily been teaching fourth and fifth grade. I have a master's in education that has a specialization in STEAM. I also have a single subject specialization credential for science as well. I have a GATE certification as well as a micro credential in GATE. I've spent the last 10 years at my current site. Our demographics are very particular. We have about 30% special education. We're about 73% low socioeconomic. We have 28% English language learners, and we're a very diverse community. And for Amplify, I am super fortunate to have been working with the company and this curriculum for the last 4 years. I have been just super, super fortunate. I continually say that I've hit the lottery when it comes to science education. I stumbled upon them when I was finishing up my master's degree. I had done my thesis on how teachers' attitudes towards science education really can have a positive or a negative impact on their students' achievement. And I wanted to look for a program that could really benefit the students' achievement towards NGSS. And it just so happened that there was a program that was taking place, and I was selected to take part in a group of different programs where different grade levels were kind of piloting and testing different programs. And my grade level just happened to get Amplify. And I was so impressed that I reached out to the company and said, "What do I need to do to potentially try out another one?" And push comes to shove. Here we are 4 years later. And the achievement that my kids have made over the last 4 years has just been mind blowing, and not just in science, but literally across the board in math, literacy, everywhere. It's just been amazing. So, like I said, I have a very particular interest in the different demographics, primarily because my classroom itself has a very high population of special education students. For general education teachers, this is a really important issue because when we get curriculum, oftentimes we spend a lot of time taking the curriculum and really having to mesh and make and create so many different pieces of it to really cater to the students in our room. And one of the things that I really admired about the Amplify curriculum was that I didn't have to spend all of this time making and creating because it was already part of their curriculum. It already came with the sentence frames. It already came with the visual and language supports that I didn't have to create on my own. The graphic organizers were already there. The anchor charts were already created. It was already with that multimodal instruction. And what I really liked was the textbooks. They have all of these different textbooks for each individualized unit. So each unit within the grade level comes equipped with anywhere from 5 to 6 manageable textbooks. Usually, when we get a textbook, we're used to like a pretty thick level textbook. It's kind of intimidating. But these ones are equipped to be like little snippets, bite-sized morsels of textbooky goodness, if you will, where you could do it in a partner read. You could turn it into a guided reading. I've actually taken it where I can give it to my SAI, my resource specialist, and they can front load the vocabulary. They can front load the curriculum, if you will. I could give it to my PHI classrooms that do inclusion in my classroom. So those kids are already coming into those lessons fully prepared with the academic language, with the content ready to go, fully engaged with the curriculum. And for my special education kids, that's really, really critical to ensure that they're participating, they're engaged, and they feel like they're successful. And so, what I have on the screen are just examples of those particular textbooks that we are actually using as part of our ongoing unit. We are in the Modeling Matter unit, and we actually just finished reading Made of Matter. And it's really cool because in these books, it's very bright, vibrant, everything's called out. If you want to talk about engaging, these books are super, super engaging. My kids cannot wait to get their hands on these textbooks every time we read. So, another population are our English language learners. We are all familiar with this population. We have a wide variety of these kids in our classrooms. Spanish speakers, Arabic speakers. I just recently had a student who came over from Brazil who was a brand new English speaker, fluent in Portuguese, who was here because his father was on a student visa working on his PhD. And that was really, really cool. So imagine my enthusiastic, woohoo moment when I realized that there was an English Portuguese glossary that he could access. Every single unit comes equipped with these multi-language glossaries, and there's 10 different languages: Arabic, Urdu, Vietnamese, super accessible with both the English and the language there in order to allow the content to be accessible. Because it's not just a matter of having the English language be there, you also want to make sure that these students are accessing that curriculum and they're learning the material as well in the language that is comfortable to them. Each lesson as well has specific strategies that are called out for that particular lesson. Maybe it is a lesson that has really difficult vocabulary. For our modeling matter unit, there's some really challenging lessons and some really challenging words. And so it calls out certain moments. Hey, maybe you need to take a moment here to really focus on the oral language. Maybe, hey, take a moment, look at how you're strategizing and grouping students. It also has built in vocabulary scaffolds. What I really enjoy is not having to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to worry about creating my own anchor charts. I don't have to worry about spending hours creating my own vocabulary to put up on the wall. It comes with all of that. And then on top of that, you have these amazing PowerPoint presentations that also already have the vocabulary scaffolds there. It'll say, vocabulary, here's the word and here's the definition underneath it. Whereas before, I would have to spend hours upon hours creating all of that on my own, which was super beneficial to my kids. But again, it was all of this time that Amplify is now saving me, which is amazing. So you have again all of these visual scaffolds, visual representation, and then on top of that, in the differentiation portion in all of these different lessons, you have these call outs for potential challenges. So that for me has been amazing because I can't always predict what is going to, maybe be challenging for a certain, speaker of a certain language. But the fact that Amplify has really taken the time to go, hey, this particular language has a lot of Spanish specific words. This demographic might really struggle. Make sure you're taking note. Really means a lot to me as a teacher because it calls it out to me and allows me to make note of that before I need to teach the lesson. Another demographic that is really important for me are our high potential and gifted students. I want to make sure that my students who are, you know, really high performing, really need a challenge are also engaged the entire time that they are learning. And Nick kind of touched on this beforehand about Amplify being a phenomenon based instructional model. And what that means is that at the beginning of each of these units, a problem or kind of like a scenario is introduced. And it's very different than what I kind of started my career with, where you would just kind of be given a topic and you go through the meat and potatoes of the content, you give a test, and that's kind of the end of it, right? For modeling matter, which is what we're in right now, the kids take on the role of a food scientist. And the way that I introduce it is super engaging and the kids have immediate buy-in. I tell them, all right, friends, this time around, we're going to be food scientists. We talk about what a food scientist is, and I let them know, hey, guess what? I actually just got this email from Lauren Harold, who's the president of this food company. And they go, oh, what? No way. I'm like, yes, I'm not kidding. We got an email. Would you like to know what she wants us to do? Already there's buy-in. What does she want us to do? And I go through this scenario. There's this dye. We need to test this dye. And it starts off with something as simple as a chromatography test on a food dye. And from there, you start looking at the molecular structure of that food dye. So you're taking something as simple as looking at the molecular structure of something, whereas before you would look at the solubility of salt water, but now you're looking at chromatography, red food dye. You're looking how the molecules are interacting on the screen. You've got these visual simulators. You still have that hands-on learning. Kids are communicating up a storm, and you've got the engagement of every single student in your classroom. When I first got my very first Amplify unit, which was the ecosystem restoration, where you look at how a rainforest ecosystem is dying in one particular area, like why is this area not thriving? My students were so hyper concerned about why this population, why this area wasn't thriving. I ended up making an entire unit, not just science, but literacy, social studies. We brought in environmental sciences. Our entire room ended up blowing up into rainforest because my kids were so invested that I could immediately see just how the literary integration piece could be so relevant and important. Now, I know for a lot of teachers, right? Everyone always has that one area where we're just not confident. Everyone's got a teaching kryptonite, right? For a lot of teachers, that's science. For me, my teaching kryptonite was writing. Writing was always kind of like my area of my kryptonite until I got Amplify. Amplify for me was like the moment where I had a light bulb moment and I finally could see how I could tie the two together. And the kids' writing has never been stronger. We were able to take what they were doing in terms of their scientific arguments and how Amplify was really supporting the construction of scientific arguments with the cross curricular instruction that takes place within every single one of their units. And the reason that takes place is because these units are so wonderfully aligned with your Common Core English Language Arts standards. And because of that, the skills that these kids are developing relate perfectly to claim, evidence, reasoning, which is what we expect kids to do in fourth and fifth grade, which is analytical thinking and argumentative writing, where we want the kids to create a statement that answers the question, go back in, pull evidence, usually in the form of textual statements, and then pull reasoning. And my kids have been doing this now fabulously. And honestly, I owe a lot of that to Amplify because they support this the entire time that they are working in science, and then I can thread that into literacy. So this is actually taken in from our most recent science classroom. We are actually in the middle of doing modeling matter. This was their pre-write activity. And part of what I make them do is call out, here's my claim, here's my evidence, and here's my reasoning. And what they needed to do was they were given a scenario where there are two different substances. They don't know what the substances are. They don't know what substance C is. There's no names. They both look the same, but they have different reactions. The kids here, I will tell you right now, one is an IEP kid, one is an English language learner at about an intermediate level. There is one just straight up general education student, and there's one gifted kid. And you can see they're all pretty closely aligned with what they're able to do. And again, it's really because of how heavily supported Amplify has done in developing their program to align with literary integration and science. Now, here's where it gets really, really cool. And this is why I love, love Amplify. This is a student sample. So, this is just one of my general education students. This was the pre writing unit completely all together when they were all said and done. So their explanation was based on the experiment, the reactions that take place between substance A and substance B are not the same because they are two different substances. Due to this, it would make sense that they would react in unrelated ways to substance C. So there's your claim. During the experiment, when substance A was mixed in with substance C, substance A sunk to the bottom. However, when substance B was mixed with substance C, substance B seemed to dissolve into the liquid, which could be probably be water as it's typically used liquid in most recipes. If they were the same substance, the reaction would have been the same, and yet the two substances behaved differently. So you've got evidence and you have reasoning. And something that we have been working on so far this year, which is new to fifth grade, is a conclusion statement. Therefore, when substance A sinks to the bottom of the liquid, it reveals itself to be a different type of material than that of substance B. That dissolves when incorporated with substance C. Now, keep in mind, this is someone who I did have in fourth grade. I typically loop with my students. So they've had fourth grade Amplify that starts developing the claim evidence reasoning model. And then fifth grade adds in the conclusionary piece. So this student has had both fourth and fifth grade Amplify. And then I've also been doing the same model in literacy. What makes this really cool is what you see here then threads into literacy. So we tend to do daily literary responses with our read aloud. I will also add that this was all done during distance learning. So we weren't in person. We only just went back in person 2 weeks ago. So this was entirely done in distance learning. We are in the middle of a book called Jim Hanson's The Labyrinth. It was in the 80s. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And the question was, how did Sarah finally manage to get away from the Fireys? What was their reaction to her plan? Same structure, claim, evidence, reasoning. Sarah was able to get away from the Fireys by waiting for the right moment to catch one of their heads and throw it as far as she could. The author states on page 127, as she anticipated, one of them showed how wild he was by picking up his head and tossing it in the air. And as it came down, Sarah grabbed it and threw it as far away as she could. There's your evidence. Reasoning. This gave her enough of a distraction to separate herself from the group of Fireys. And then you go into the second question, which is also part of the fifth grade science curriculum, which is making sure that you access multiple parts of a prompt. While she put some distance between herself and the Fireys, there was no escaping them. On page 128, the Fireys remark at Sarah, and here comes your evidence. Yeah, you're only allowed to throw your own head, right? Reasoning. They try to chase her down, but she is fortunately saved by Hoggle, who is able to toss down a rope. Conclusion statement, again, part of fifth grade. Therefore, due to Sarah's ability to think on her feet and luck of running into Hoggle, she is able to escape. Oh, they made a mistake on that one. Should be the Fireys. But anyways, for me, like the growth that has been made, even in distance learning, right? Even in distance learning, has just been night and day to the types of responses and the types of literary writing that I used to get. So at the end of the day, I'm just incredibly thankful to have a program like Amplify in my classroom where both the science aspects and the literary aspects are really blended so beautifully into one another. So, yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation. I didn't want to take up too much time, and I hope I allowed enough time at the end to answer as many of your questions as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. We do have some questions, and if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to put those into the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to answer those. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left. So the first one, and I can say yes to this, but I just want to ask you, Kelly, will we be able to get a copy of these slides? I'm happy to send those out to everybody that attended, but Kelly, that's a question for you.
No, it's totally fine. I can actually make a copy of it, and then Nick, you're more than welcome to send it out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
cool.
yeah, I'll fix the hoggle thing at the bottom for my friend.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're gonna send an email tomorrow with a recording of this webinar, and we can send you the slides as well as part of that. Cool. All right. I think some of these are for me, and then we'll see if anybody has others for you. Is Amplify Science only available to schools, or can individual teachers purchase it? So mostly it's available to schools, but we do offer purchasing for individual teachers as well. I'm going to drop a link in the chat for, we call it a get in touch page, and there's a couple things you can do through there. So if you'd like to either inquire about pricing or how to purchase the program, you can do so. It sounds like this question here. We can also set you up with free reviewer access. So if you'd like to take a look at any of the units that I spoke about in the beginning of the presentation or anything that Kelly mentioned, you can take a look at that through that form. All you have to do is fill out your name and email. Another one for me, it looks like, how do I view the other spotlight sessions that were previous aired, in particular Eric Cross? So if you go back to the forum where you registered here, or if you just Google Amplify Science Educator Spotlight Series, you'll get to a landing page. You won't have to fill out your information because you've already done so. So just click enter, and that'll put you to a gated page that has a listing of all of the recordings of the webinars, including Eric's, and Kelly's will be up there tomorrow as well. Do the accommodations in Amplify Science, so I guess this one's for you, Kelly. Do the accommodations in Amplify Science enable students to keep up with the regular science classroom teaching?
Yes. In fact, what I actually noticed a couple years ago was pretty cool because of the fact that Amplify utilizes the technological simulators. They're actually very similar to what the end of the year fifth grade science test utilizes. So, what you're actually doing is giving your special education students the ability to practice with visual simulators before they have to take that end of the year test, which is kind of cool. And then on top of that, all the modifications that are built into Amplify perfectly align with all of the NGSS requirements. Everything from the cross curricular standards, the engineering standards, the environmental standards, everything is aligned to the T. Because that was one of the biggest reasons why I kind of was already in 2017 looking for what I could do to support my students in the classroom. Because I wanted to make sure that by the time that new test was rolling around for my fifth grade students, they weren't just going to be left in the dark doing old standard science, that they were actually getting a curriculum that was aligned with NGSS. So all of my special education students are all super, super supported with this program. And I don't have to do a whole lot of extra stuff to support them, which for me is a huge time saver.
Awesome. Just a bunch of thank yous. It looks like we might have hit the end of questions here. So thank you so much. Sorry, I have to teach now. Good, go teach. That's definitely, we don't want to keep you from that. Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing, Kelly. It's always inspiring to hear other teachers share amazing successes and learning growth stories about their students. Thank you. Thank yous. Lots of thank yous. So I'd like to echo that thank you as well.
Well, thank you. I'm always happy to share. Like I said, like I always feel like I've won the science lottery, just because the continual growth, the continual engagement. My kids are always super excited to do science, and it's made distance learning absolutely a joy in a very, very weird time.
Most definitely. And my hat's off to you and everybody else out there for what you've been doing, really just in general, but especially the past year. One last question. Do we know if Amplify Science fits well with other countries' curriculums, i.e. Canada? I am out of my element there, unfortunately. I don't know much about the Canadian standards or whatnot. So I think so. We do have an international account executive. So if you click on the link that I put up here earlier, I'm going to put it in one more time here. It's the most recent link at the bottom. If you put your information in there and get in touch with us, we can have somebody follow up with you and speak a little bit more specifically about Canada. So with that, Kelly, I would just like to, again, say thank you so much. I appreciate everything you do, and I always love working with you. So thank you again to all of you for taking the time out of your day. I know time is of the essence these days. So we appreciate you taking your time and giving it to us for a little bit here. So with that, we're going to give you a minute back to your day, and we'll look forward to hearing from you all soon and keeping in touch, hopefully. So everybody take care. Thank you again, Kelly, and we'll speak to you all soon.